Oh, perfect. Okay, we're live. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're Matt and Matt from the Senstennial Podcast, and today we have
Baby.
a special episode that we're doing as we're going live with some of the fans, the listeners of the podcast. And we have a great lineup. I'm very excited for some of the people we'll have on, or all of the people, I should say, that we're having on joining us today. Starting with a true beauty, someone who is living out of the Hazeldean McDonald's. No, I'm just kidding. But are there temporarily. Our good old friend Keegan Little is going to hop on the podcast as our first guest tonight.
And
And
I also want to say, like, I'm pretty positive Keegan and his brother were like one of the first guests we ever had on the Senstennial.
weren't we on? I think we were on their show actually.
I
Or were
thought it
they?
was vice versa. I thought we
No.
we did both. Oh well,
All right. Well, let's get down
sorry,
to
Keegan.
business. I know we got a lot of people waiting. All right, Keegan, welcome to the stream. How's the Hazeldean McDonald's? Are you ready to talk some
This
Sens?
is the wildest thing. He's coming to us live from the Hazeldean. He
Oh
just dropped out.
no! Dude. Okay, well, while we're waiting for Keegan to come back, let's go to our second in line caller for the night, Brett. Brett, I know you were excited to join the stream today.
Oh
How are
damn!
you
Look at Brett
doing?
here.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Not
Just
too
fabulous,
bad.
Brett. I love that hat. It's good
That is a
stuff.
Oh,
small hat.
hey, you know what? All I can say, guys, is after the season that we've had, we took major steps, and I heard you guys saying right beforehand that if we're gonna be having Snoop Dogg or Ryan Reynolds as part of the ownership group, that that would hype me up enough as it is.
Absolutely.
Totally. So, I have questions for you. So, other than the Snoop Dogg news that came down the pipeline today, obviously that's something very random out of the blue, at least for me. So I don't know how you're feeling on that. But the ownership situation, are you picking a side? Is it like hashtag Team Ryan or Team Snoop? Who are you kind of favoring?
To be perfectly honest with you guys, I would probably say I am on the hashtag Ryan Reynolds side of things. Only because that, you hear all the success that he's had with his Wrexham soccer team, and the fact that he is very into wanting to own the Ottawa Senators. Like, you're not just going to make trips from, Hollywood earlier in the season to see the Sens take on the Canucks and whatnot. And the fact that he's made more public appearances than, anyone from the Nico Sparks group leads me to believe that that the Remington Group is the front runner to buy the Sens. I really do.
Yeah, totally. And like you said, it was nice to see Ryan Reynolds at not just one game, but at least two or three games this season. And for a guy who, is as busy as Ryan Reynolds, that was quite awesome to see as a Sens fan, to see him get engaged and be all excited to be seen on the Jumbotron and everything. But I have another question for you, and just wondering, what were your thoughts on the season overall? What are your expectations for the offseason, and how do you hope the Sens fare in 2023-24?
Well, there's a lot to digest from those questions that you asked me. So I'll start with number one. I really do think that the Sens had a really good season. I know that, we had that expectation down near the last, maybe I'd probably say 10 or 15 games, that Dorian promised us that we were going to play meaningful games, which is what we did. And, they did that. And even though they only finished 6 points out of a playoff spot, you just look at what that division is going to be like next year. I think Ottawa is going to be jumping ahead of some of those teams. Like the fact that, I mean, it pains me to say this, but the Toronto Maple Leafs making it into the second round, I don't think any of us would have predicted that. I mean, the Boston Bruins are going to be taking a step back. They, the Florida Panthers beat them last night, and I don't think anyone predicted that was going to happen. So I really do think that Ottawa's in the driver's seat next season, and I wanted to know if you guys kind of felt the same way about that.
Go ahead, Matt, if you want to answer first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of things that are going to go right for Ottawa, considering most of their core is already locked up currently. I would say Boston is destined to take a step back, considering their cap situation. Tampa Bay is probably going to do the same, not because they're built badly or anything. It's just their core is aging, and I'm gonna say that the Sens are gonna be pretty easily in a wild card spot next season, and maybe even pushing for third or second in the Atlantic.
Okay, my expectations aren't as high. I think personally, wild card would be more than fine with me. I do hope they do better than that, of course. I think it really hinges on what they do in net. I think their defensive core is the best it's looked in years, better than the 2016-17 run, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah, so that's really nice. With the forward core, I do hope DeBrincat stays. I know people have some concerns over salary cap, but after next season, they'll have $3.5 million of dead cap that comes off the books, which is really nice. And yeah, and plus the salary cap will rise again likely next year. So it would be good to see them bring back DeBrincat, but ultimately I think they just need to find someone else to play goal because I really like Forsberg, but he needs some backup. So
I have a question for you guys, and this was something that I had thought about since the off season has started. If you're Pierre Dorion and you decide that come the draft that DeBrincat comes back to you and says, I have no interest in wanting to be back here, would you guys use DeBrincat as a trade asset to go out and get like a Jeremy Swayman from Boston who's an RFA, or use DeBrincat as a trade chip to bring in a goaltender?
So I think because of DeBrincat's qualifying offer next season, it would be hard to trade him to a team like Boston who has salary cap issues. I do, totally agree that going after a guy like Jeremy Swayman, or I've said it on a couple times before on the podcast, going after a guy like Carter Hart, who has 1 year left at 3.8 mil, that's definitely a manageable contract to find a way to fit into your lineup. I personally, so I don't want to see DeBrincat go. I've been pretty vocal about that. I just find if you trade him, you're going to just be looking for someone to replace that spot, and I don't like that.
You're not wrong there, Matt. That's a good point.
It's just tough. So if Ottawa had someone in their system who I could see, being like that next level sniper, then totally. But at this point in time, I think you kind of got to hold on to him. And even like I am actually as bold of an opinion to go as far as saying that even if DeBrincat only signed a qualifying offer, I would be okay with that next season. Because in my mind, players always play lights out in a contract year. And even if it means he prices himself out of Ottawa, if Ottawa does what Columbus did in like 2019 and just say, screw it, we're going all in and throw all their money in and trade for assets, that are expiring UFAs or whatever, and try to make even just a run next year, I'd be down for that. I know it's bold, but I am, I don't know. I kind of want to see some bold stuff here from the Sens.
But do you guys, I mean, the debate's gone on all season. Like, even at Alex DeBrincat's year-end presser, I don't know if you guys saw that, but I didn't get the sense from his availability that he really sounded optimistic about wanting to be here with this core. And to me, that's a red flag, because if he's not invested in wanting to be a part of this core, then where does he think things are going to be better for him than what's going on here in Ottawa?
It's a good question. Matt, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, nobody wants to see a star player like that move on. If somebody brought up a great point at the start of the season in his Players Tribune when he joined the Sens, he said there's no better situation in the league than the Sens currently right now, and it's all speculation, and I'm going to speculate a little more. And I don't think Alex DeBrincat is a huge fan of DJ Smith. I don't think Claude Giroux is either. And those are two guys that, are the current, future, and present and all that sort of stuff of this team. And, I would not be surprised if they just didn't gel, and he's hoping to see what happens with ownership. And if new ownership comes in and just fires DJ, I feel.
Sorry to cut you off there, Matt. Like, just going on your point there about new ownership. Are you guys on the belief that, like, whoever the ownership group is, if let's say it is the Remington group with Ryan Reynolds, is Ryan Reynolds going to clean house, or is he going to, sit down with Pierre Dorion and say, like, I think maybe it's now time to switch coaches? Or does Reynolds decide that he wants to bring in Alfie? Because I know that's been the rumor for the longest time, that will Alfie be at the president of hockey operations if new ownership comes in? So, I mean, in my honest opinion, I think it would be better for them to clean house, because, I do credit Dorion for what he's done. Like, he's addressed getting Jacob Chikrin, who, is going to fit in very nicely with this top six. But I don't think that trade in particular was enough for him to save his job. But I'm not sure where you guys feel about that. But I've talked to a lot of Sens fans this year at the games, and they think that ownership is going to clean house.
Yeah, and once we answer this question, we'll have to bring on our next guest. But thank you, Brett, so far. This has been a great chat. And to answer you, it's hard for me, because I know some people like to separate the pre-Melnyk Pierre Dorion and the post-Melnyk Pierre Dorion. And in my mind, post-Melnyk Pierre Dorion has done a great job. My one issue, and even when it was freshly signed, I was not 100% on, was the Matthew Joseph contract. And I really like him as a player. I'm actually higher on him than a lot of Sens fans, I think. He's one of Ottawa's most effective penalty killers, a great defensive forward. This year, sadly, he just didn't really have it. And that's why last summer, because he had such a hot end to the season, I was hoping Dorion would sign him to like a 1-year prove-it deal. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Is what it is. But Pierre Dorion over the past year, I think, has done a great job. That said, if new ownership were to come in and clean house, if you will, I would like them to hang on to Ryan Bonus and give him a shot at GM, because he did a great job at player development and scouting in Pittsburgh. And I think if you get rid of a young resource like that, who could, in my opinion, potentially be an extremely good GM, I would be disappointed. So I hope that kind of answers your question. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. Matt, I don't know if you want to add to it before we move on, but
I think there's a lot of questions and a lot of answers that we probably won't get until new ownership. But Brett, you had some awesome questions, some awesome comments, and thanks so much for coming on. And I hope to have you on again.
No problem, guys. I appreciated it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, anytime, Brett. Thanks.
Take care, guys.
You as well. So
Good guy, that Brett.
Yeah, that was great. Brett had some good questions. He had some good answers. So really glad that we had Brett on to lead us off. Now, Keegan, hopefully the Hazeldean McDonald's Wi-Fi is doing well. After Keegan, we have Wreck-It, Kevin, and Alex lined up. So we have still a handful of guests to go. All the people who are asking questions in chat, I think at the end of the stream, Matt and I will run through some of those bad boys and get some answers to you. So coming live onto the show next, let's add Keegan to the stream. Keegan, welcome, buddy. Hopefully your Wi-Fi doesn't cut out this time. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, boys, I'm coming off a 12-and-a-half-hour shift, and I'm sitting in the middle of a McDonald's because I didn't want to go home for my hockey game. So I'm having a great night.
Awesome. Well, you love to
Holy
hear it.
crap.
So we asked Brett about the ownership, and we'll ask you as well. You know, what do you think about Ian Mendez breaking the story about Snoop Dogg being interested, and you know, what are your preferences for ownership?
I mean, Snoop Dogg isn't another A-lister like Reynolds, right? So it'd be great to have him, but my preference is still Reynolds. You know, as much as this sounds like a stereotype, we're Canadian, he's Canadian. That's always nice. He has a tie to the city, living in Vanier for a part of his life. So, and he's the one who's been open about being interested for the longest. So he's still my front runner. And by the sounds of it, he's willing to pay like it too. So I'm okay with that.
Definitely. Yeah, so like we asked Brett, we wanted to ask you, you know, what were your thoughts on the Sens this season? You know, did they meet your expectations? What do you have for hopes for the offseason and then next season?
I mean, they met my expectations as much as they could for missing Norris for the entire year. I mean, Ottawa seems to be plagued with centers and shoulders injuries, so hopefully that's a trend that stops. But all in all, I would say they met expectations. They didn't exceed. They didn't fall short, but you can tell that the players wanted more, and you could tell that they could have gotten more as well. As for next season, playoff or bust, man. Like, I don't think there's any way around it. If you miss the playoffs next year, it's not just we played meaningful games in April, blah, blah, blah. No, you fail. So just make the playoffs next year, and as we're seeing this year, if you make it, friggin' anything will happen.
Yeah, definitely been a lot of upsets in the first round, and you know, tonight starting soon is the Devils Rangers game 7, so we'll see who wins that, and could potentially, depending on how you view things, could be another upset if the Devils win, just because of their lack of experience in the playoffs and all that. But
go DJ Z-Bad.
Yeah, fair enough. I know there's definitely going to be some Sens fans cheering for Zibanejad. Maybe I'm the odd one out cheering for the Devils. I just want to see a lot of new teams make it to the second round this year, minus the Leafs. I'm sorry about that, guys. I swear I didn't ask for that, but
yeah, I can imagine your brother is pretty stoked about that, eh, Keeg?
So I was watching that game with a buddy and my dad, but my brothers and I and my dad all have a group chat, and I'm the only Sens fan. The three of them are Leaf fans. I think it wasn't even excitement. It was more just disbelief for them. They were kind of like, oh my God, it actually happened? Are you kidding me? And like, I was giving it to them after game 5, saying like, oh, here they go again, blah, 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 because you have to do that. But yeah. I will say, I was not cheering for the Leafs, but I'm not mad they made it. And if you're looking at the bigger picture, hockey as a sport does better when the biggest franchise wins.
I'm writing notes. You writing this down, Matt? We got to write this in our notes.
Yeah.
Right? I'm writing this down right now.
What are you writing?
Keegan, noted Leafs cheer.
Yeah.
I will find out where you live and burn that paper.
Yeah.
All right. I guess, yeah, you kind of answered all our questions. Is there anything you want to ask us? Any comments you had? Anything else?
Well, to kind of go off of what Brett was saying there about, you guys kind of mentioned that trading DeBrincat to a team like Boston or a contender might be difficult because of the qualifying offer. I was kind of interested in trading him as much as I would hate for him to stay in the division. The idea of trading him to a team like Detroit that might give up some valuable futures kind of sounds interesting if we can split those futures for a player that could help now. So a goalie that I don't think is going to be on the market, but if they decide to blow up the team would be Thatcher Demko. So if Vancouver decides to blow things up, would you be okay with flipping DeBrincat for future assets, which you then flip for a goalie like Thatcher Demko?
I feel like Vancouver has the cap room to actually just take DeBrincat.
Yeah, but do they want to rebuild?
I mean,
That's
like, yeah, I if you're moving out a top goalie for a top winger, like, it is a bit of a downgrade. Like, I think a goaltender is a much more important position. But like when you're adding a guy like of the caliber that DeBrincat is, like that's a pretty significant deal. Yeah, I mean, if he didn't want to stay here after his qualifying offer, like whatever, then yeah. But I think at this juncture, like we got to move forward with the guy. I think he will see, regardless of whatever happens with new ownership or whatever, like this is going to be a playoff team next year. And, playoffs is a hell of a drug for anybody. And DeBrincat hasn't been there in quite a while. So, getting in and once you get in, you make some noise, and like, look at what the Panthers and Seattle are doing. They just upset the President's Trophy historic team ever, and the previous year's Cup winners. So I think you just hope for the best, and I would love Thatcher Demko. I don't think they're trading him after that abysmal start. Yeah, I feel like they were ready to, if they could get whatever, and just like rebuild during a season. But at this point, I think he's a bit of a pipe dream that, like, you would be a dumb GM if you gave up on him, personally.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sorry, I cut you off, Matt.
No, I was just going to say, I think Juan has a fair point. I think if you're Vancouver, it's really hard to move on from a goalie when you have no one else in your system that's really ready to make a jump, right? You have to fill that hole regardless. If Thatcher Demko was, 30 plus, I could see it. But because he's still a young goaltender, I just don't think Vancouver does that, because they really don't have anybody who can take the reins going forward.
That's fair. I do actually want to ask you guys, who gets more playoff goals next year, Matthew or Brady Tkachuk?
I will go. Oh man, it depends on matchups too. But okay, I'll say Matthew only because I think Brady is a legend. Love the guy, but Matthew has more of the goal scoring traits, whereas Brady has more of like the power forward in your face traits, and he'll likely be in front of the net and all that, blocking, screening out the goalie. And I think that will mean that he gets less goals in a potential playoff series than Matthew, who is not relied upon to screen the goalie, but is actually used more of a shooter on like the power play or even just while in the offensive zone. So that's why.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, Matt is the only, or the first two-time American 100-point player. Not even Patrick Kane did that in like consecutive seasons. So I would probably put easy money on Matt, but the Panthers are a team that are kind of regressing. a little bit. But hey, if Bobrovsky keeps playing the way he has, like they'll have a shot at anything. But he's got to figure out his own stuff because once he secured the bag, he was like, I'm gonna be not very good.
I think you guys are discounting Brady. I think Brady gets 40 goals next year. Like,
No, I could totally see it.
They're not that far off in goal scoring.
I think.
But you said playoffs.
Yeah,
We're talking
sure.
playoffs.
Yeah. No,
you're saying Brady doesn't show up in big games like Matt does?
I'm not saying that, but I think Matt is. I mean, he just did something that nobody expected his team to. Like it's hard to discount that. And I love Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's totally possible. I just think the roles they play on their team is what really makes the difference. So, but
that's fair.
But yeah, no, thank you. That's an interesting question, and I guess we'll see going forward. If both teams are in the playoffs again, well, I shouldn't say again, but if both teams are in the playoffs next season, it'll be good to maybe do a bit of a comparison, especially if they somehow end up against one another. So.
I got to write my own note saying Matt, Brady Tkachuk haters.
Whoa!
Yeah, tell Bennett that he'll finally get rid of that moniker.
Yeah. All right. Well, Keegan, thanks for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
This is the second most iconic moment from an Ottawa McDonald's. The first was obviously Rito Raccoon, but
Yeah, next time go to the now closed Rito Street McDonald's in Columbus. What's this Hazeldean McDonald's? Come on.
Bro, I avoided that like the plague when it was open.
Yeah, didn't we all?
Oh,
I think the plague avoided that McDonald's like the plague.
Thanks for coming on, Keegan.
Yeah,
we appreciate you, and have a good hockey game.
Yeah, good luck, dude.
Thanks, boys. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Well, Keegan's always good for a laugh, a good jovial.
What a wild ride that was.
So
amazing.
Thank you again, Keegan, for joining us. I liked the McDonald's elevator music in the background.
I know. I was thinking the same thing.
That was splendid. Next up, we got the noted #1 Cam Talbot stan on Twitter.com, Wreckit, who loves Cam Talbot, and I did make a bet with Wreckit at the beginning of the season. I said, if Cam Talbot scores a goal this year, I will buy him Cam Talbot Sens jersey. However, it didn't happen, and I'm sorry to have to introduce you like that, Wreckit, but welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
Doing good. Long day, but we're doing good.
Okay, great photo off the bat. We're doing well right now. So
is that a meow meow with a Sens hat? Is this the thing? Okay.
I'm now the Sens meow meow. That's
amazing.
So
love it.
With Cam Talbot going to free agency, who will be your new Sens meow mew?
We don't know yet.
People want to know.
We gotta wait for that. If Jeremy Swayman comes to the Sens, he'll be my meow meow.
So Wreckit, are you just like a goalie stan? Is this the deal or?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice.
I don't know. I just like goalies. There's little guys.
Yeah, you're talking to goalies right now. Matt is a ball hockey goalie. I'm an ice hockey goalie.
Wow. Is that like a diss?
Have you ever played on the ice?
I have, actually.
Then Matt is an ice and ball hockey goalie, and I am strictly an ice hockey goalie.
Believe it or not, though, I had a guy who was drafted to the OHL show up at an outdoor rink that I was at one time. And he took a shot. We were doing breakaway shots, and I don't know how, but I managed to save it with my shoulder. And then the next shot, he showed me the business. He wanted to show me what was up. So he absolutely schooled me. But that's okay. He didn't end up playing in the OHL. So really, my claim to fame is that he was only drafted to the OHL. He didn't actually play any games.
I just talked about. Why are we talking over Wreckit? Okay, who is your favorite NHL goalie? And if I swear to ever loving hell, if you say Cam Talbot.
Oh, that's a hard question. Like all time?
I mean, yeah, sure. Why not?
Jonathan Quick, #1. Henrik Lundqvist, #2. Craig Anderson, #3.
Honestly, that's a good list. I like it. I would probably put Andy at the top because Andy's the bomb. Hank too because he's hot, and Man, let's be
I didn't
real.
know it was
here.
that kind of show tonight.
Well, then why not? We're talking about meow meows, Matt. Come on.
Henrik Lundqvist is a stud. I'll give you that. That's
Yeah,
totally
Rangers
true.
tend to find very hot goalies for some reason.
Yeah. Shesty with his little hair bands. Oof.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, well, Reckitt, I want to ask you a very important question. I asked Brett this. I asked Keegan this. What do you think about Ian Mendes dropping the whole Snoop Dogg interest in ownership with the Nico Sparks bid, and how that compares in your mind to the Ryan Reynolds bid?
It's like you can't lose in this situation now. Like one bid, you got Ryan Reynolds, the Rock's tied to another bid, and now you got Snoop Dogg 2 tied to a bid. It's like you can't really lose with any of the bidders right now. Like based on what you see, each one comes with its own pros. Like the Rock's like big Hollywood movie star. Ryan Reynolds is a Canadian movie star. Like grew up in Ottawa, spent some time in Ottawa. He's investing tons into Canadian film industry, that type of stuff. And Snoop Dogg is like a legend, so there is no going wrong with like any of the bids at this point.
Yeah, they all have Canadian ties as well. The Rock's father was from Halifax.
Yeah, I
Ryan,
forgot that part.
yeah,
And
yeah.
didn't he play in the CFL?
He did play in the CFL. And then obviously Ryan Reynolds lived for a little bit in Ottawa. And Snoop Doggy Dogg, major fan of Nardwuar, who is Canadian, and also loves Ottawa's Stanky Danky.
That too.
Oh my
What
God.
is it? Devil's Grass? Isn't that what it's
The
called?
Devil's
Devil's
Lettuce.
Lettuce.
Devil's
Yeah.
Lettuce, that's it.
But I only know that from. Anyway, next question.
Yeah, if you're watching this live stream right now, just put in your favorite synonym for marijuana in the chat.
I got a slide full of them, but I don't remember
Amazing.
them all. Yeah.
Oh God, this is going off the rails. Okay. Yeah. So
When is it not? When is it not?
That's true.
With me
especially-
around, when is it not?
Hey, yeah, no, I
Hey.
feel you. This podcast gets all sorts of crazy, so we love it. All right, so the next thing we want to ask, how did you think the Sens really fared overall this season? What are your expectations going forward for the team in the summer and into next season?
It was a step in the right direction. Like you went up like 83 points. Like you're at what 86 points now, compared to last season where they're below 500.
God,
So
I
like
actually forgot
they're
about
above 500 now, which is like a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Offense was pretty good most of this season. I think depth scoring needs to be addressed though. That's kind of been
preach.
yeah, that's the crux. I think depth scoring and goaltending is the two big things they need to address. I think
Yeah.
defense, you can ride it with who you have in the system already, and just like maybe re-sign Hamnick if they want to. In terms of goaltending, I've heard lots of names going around. I like Jeremy Swayman. I threw out Mackenzie Blackwood as an interesting choice as a stopgap for a year behind Forsberg, so Sogard can play another year in the minors. Because I don't see the Devils keeping him, but he's been kind of meh. But like he's also played really good hockey, and I don't see him starting over Forsberg. That's just me at this position.
Yeah, and I think that's actually not a bad option. Goalies, as everyone says, goalies are voodoo. You never really know year to year what you're gonna get. But you're right. I must have seen your tweet just skimming my timeline, because I remember seeing someone mention Blackwood, so it must have been you. But yeah, I think Mackenzie Blackwood would be an interesting option. He's had some good performances in the past, and yeah, interesting option. I think people want Ottawa to go for a bona fide goaltender who has a lot of experience, maybe some playoff experience, and has good stats there. So it's hard, right? Expectations versus reality and what's available.
From my point of view, dealing with the cap is if you make that trade this season, you probably have to trade Forsberg. Because you'll be either have to trade DeBrincat, because you also have Pinto and Brandstrom you have to resign. I don't see the Sens wanting to trade them.
Yeah.
DeBrincat is 10 mil max this season. I don't see him signing a long-term extension for more than 10 mil this season.
Yeah, and I don't think he has the leverage right now. I think if he takes his qualifying offer and then rolls into next season and has another 40 plus goal season and bounces back, then he could ask for that kind of money. I don't think God would give it to him, but
No.
I get what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, and like a lot of the names are like, do you want to sign like Antti Ranta, Frederick Anderson? Have been like fine, but like Carolina's very different team than the Sens. It's
Yes.
Carolina, and it's like Jonathan Quick or Semyon Varlamov. They're not re-signing here. The other one I've seen that I kind of don't hate is Aiden Hill, who is okay for Vegas, but the Sens' defensive structure has to improve because that was the thing with Talbot. Talbot was an all-star last year. He did not do well with the defensive structure in Ottawa.
Yeah,
and then it just went off the rails from there.
Yeah, for sure. And especially earlier in the season, I think people who follow us on Twitter know that I tend to post some of the Hockey Viz analytics. And it was interesting because looking at Cam Talbot's earlier in the season, the team actually was playing much better in front of him than they were in front of Forsberg. But Forsberg was bailing them out more often, whereas Cam Talbot was playing like at an average to good level, but then as the season went on, I think Cam Talbot was battling injuries. Forsberg was never able to come back, so then the workload is higher on Cam Talbot, and Sogard wasn't ready for all those games, and I think you just had a compounding amount of problems that just came to the forefront, and yeah, issues with the defense definitely showed, and I think the goalies just weren't getting the support for most of the time down the stretch there when they botched the Western road trip, among other things. So definitely, like you said, the defensive structure, it's going to need work if Ottawa wants to find some improvement.
Yeah,
next year.
and it's not like the Sens don't have a lack of talent on the back end. It's how they're utilizing that talent in the back end. They're kind of like scattered around the back end. Like you can have a guy like walk in like on a 3-on-1 and you're like, oh, okay, this is just happening now. Where a goalie can't bail you out on every 3-on-1 and you're like, okay. Where like I think Talbot's gonna like he's not gonna be like an all-star again, but I think he's gonna regain some of that playing just overall. I think he'll just overall be better next season. Just he didn't mesh with the Sens. I still think it was the right trade for the time. It just didn't pay off. Because like I find Ottawa's a goalie graveyard, I call it, where goalies come to die, or we trade really good young goalies just before they get good.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't like talking about it, but yeah, here we are. Yeah, listen. I mean, we've had a lot of goalie issues. Craig Anderson really stymied a lot of those and made us better than we probably were. I think Forsberg is a good option going forward, but he definitely needs some support. Another name, I really liked a lot of the names that you put out there. Sean Oxman in the comments said, should we kick tires on Connor Hellebuck if he comes available? Probably, yeah. But
with an extension.
Well, he's got 1 year left, and he wants to play playoff hockey, and I think the Sens are going to be playing playoff hockey for quite some time.
Deep playoff hockey. The
Jets
keep making the playoffs, but the Jets keep.
Yeah. And I think the Sens and Jets are probably at different points of their hockey spectrums right now. But a guy I really like Karel Vejmelka. I think he's got 1 or 2 years left. He's making about just a shade under 3. And, if you're taking out Cam Talbot's contract and adding that contract in, it's just like, addition by subtraction and whatever that is. But
so in my mind, if we bring it, like, let's say we bring Vejmelka at like the 2.5 to 3 mil range, you're going to have to sign a whole bunch of depth guys at league min, or you're going to have to bring rookies in at league min. So I think you're subtracting, if you want to keep both Brandstrom and Pinto, which it looks like they want to do, it's because Pinto was on his 925, but he's going to want more than that this season. The crux will always be Pinto and Brandstrom's contract. I don't see DeBrincat really holding it up unless he signs that long-term deal, because I think the Sens will basically have the $6 million to sign Brandstrom, Pinto, and then a goalie if they choose. I can also see them just saying we'll roll with Sogard, because that's what Dorian's comments sounded like at the end of the season, was like he thinks he's an NHL-ready goalie. And I think they'll ease Sogard with start the season, and then if they need help, they'll bring in a goalie. Bring Braden Holtby out of retirement.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it already once on this live stream and in episodes past as well, but you know, a guy to me like Carter Hart, if Philly even shows an ounce of interest in making him available, the Sens got to jump on that. And I really like Joseph, but if the Sens need to, you know, shed a draft pick to move that contract just to free up about $3 million more on the books to go after getting that extra piece that'll be more essential, and then maybe using a bit of that money as well to get a depth player, you know, kind of like what they did with Tyler Mott. I was really happy with that signing. It didn't work out, but I thought it was a savvy move. It was smart. And the fact that a guy like that was sitting in free agency for so long, I think it was good that Ottawa jumped on that, and I think they just need to look at opportunities like that again. But yeah, I'm sure I could talk for a long time about potential depth options for the Sens, but I think we want to make sure we have enough time to bring on the next guest. So
yeah, so thanks for having me on, and thanks for the Sens podcast debut.
Yeah, for sure, and thank you for joining us. You were a good chat, and I'm glad we had some good back and forth. So thank you.
All right, have a good night, guys.
You too. Thanks. So that was Wreck-It, the Sens Meow Meow, and noted Cam Talbot stan, for those of you out there that aren't on Twitter. But next up, we have our good old friend, Sens superfan, Kevin, joining us. Everyone loves a good chat with Kevin, so let's bring Kevin in here to chat with us. Kevin, how are you doing tonight?
What's up, boys? How are you doing?
Not too
better
bad,
now, Kev.
All right.
So, off the top, we've been asking everybody. We've had two people say that between Ryan Reynolds and the Snoop Dogg, the two bids, you know, and the two celebrities highlighting each group, we've had two people say Ryan Reynolds and one person say they're okay with either. So where do you fall in the ownership debate?
Yeah, if it was power rankings, probably Ryan Reynolds just because of all the Ottawa stuff. But like what Wreck-It said, like either way, like I'm one of those like open-minded people. Like either way, as long as it's not like what Bruce Garriott was mentioning with that other guy that owns the Hockey News, right? That's probably gone bye now for him, unfortunately, right? So I mean, grateful that even Bruce doesn't even want to mention his name anymore. But like those two are probably like the top two for me.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I don't think there's any question there. Both just bring like a lot of publicity with them too. And I think for a small market team like Ottawa, you know, we have a very passionate fan base, but to help, you know, the advertising, merchandising, all that for the Sens, having a guy like either Snoop Dogg or Ryan Reynolds in the fold is very weird to say, by the way. It's like one of those things where when Ian Mendes dropped the tweet earlier that was like, oh, some interesting ownership news, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's happening. They're going to announce the sale. And then he's like, Snoop Dogg has joined the Nico Sparks bid. And I was like, wait, what the hell? This isn't what I was expecting. So, no, that was great. And it's really interesting to see, you know, well-known celebrities getting involved and wanting to purchase the Ottawa Senators. So very cool indeed.
I just wanted to add too, like, I mean, everyone probably mentioned it before, but like Ryan Reynolds, just for marketing, right? Right? For Wrexham. Like seeing that happen, that's pretty awesome. But imagine like people from the Philippines or from all over the world, they know Ryan Reynolds. Like imagine they'll start cheering for us now, right? If he were the owner, like having like a documentary on whatever streaming platform it is, and like, oh, let's cheer for this low-key G7 capital city team now. Like that would be awesome, right? That would be like epic. Like you imagine, like even pre, you know, Melnick passing away and all that. Like, can any of us imagine that the team would be sold for $1 billion? I don't think any one of us could bet money for that, right? That's epic.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, and for sure, I don't think anyone really would have expected the Sens being up for sale and having bids of that amount. So, yeah, no question, that's impressive. But We wanted to ask you some other questions, and I know you've been standing by, so you've heard kind of what we've been asking everyone. Also, got to mention, I love the vibes you're bringing with the t-shirt. I should have mentioned that off the
Thank you.
top.
And all the bobbleheads back there. Which
yeah.
bobblehead is your favorite?
Oh, geez, there's a lot of them up there. Like some from like the 2017. There's even the Red Blacks Big Joe up there. Oh, it's hard. I mean, probably like recently, just because I got to chat with him, Mark Mathot. Like it was pretty cool to chat with him.
Nice.
I was a friend of mine celebrated his birthday like last week, and we went to the charity event for the Ottawa Hospital, and he was there. So that was pretty
awesome.
Cool.
That's wicked.
Sweet. Yeah.
Happy birthday to Kevin's friend.
Yeah.
I hope you're listening.
I wish I'll give like if he gets to watch this later. Shout out to Cody at Snipe and Score. He does like NHL 23 franchise mode.
Oh,
and he does like you guys heard of him, right? And he does his custom rosters. Yeah. That's him.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, yeah, I was gonna ask you, what were your thoughts on the Sens season? Did it meet your expectations, fall a little bit flat, or something else? And what are you hoping they do this offseason to get them prepped for 23-24?
Yeah, I think they did meet it because when Pierre Dorian said meaningful games, we did get meaningful games until like 6 games left. Like even though the chances were getting less and less, like after like the Western Coast trip, like reality wise, they're probably not gonna make it. But it's like there's still like like a 0.25% or something. You know what I mean? But like it's still there. Like it doesn't matter to me as long as it's still there. But like I think they did. Like I don't think. I'm not sure if the players ever said the P word, like the playoff word. They may have or may have not. Like depends on the Sportsnet thing. But I think they did. Like even just him acquiring Jake Chychrun like out of nowhere, right? Like we were seeing like asking prices that are like too ridiculous, like with Shane Pinto, with like maybe Mary Love, the other goalie, and then Sogard. Like I don't think any one of us wanted that to happen, right? But then you hear the price. I mean, it's still pretty high. Like it's not like cheap or anything, but it's cheaper than what any one of us thought. So
yeah. It's easier to give up draft picks that don't have any emotion attached or like any, heart. Like if it's Shane Pinto, it's a guy that a lot of fans have already grown attached to versus a first round pick could be anybody. And so, yeah.
It could even be Jacob Chychrun.
Well, it could have been if Ottawa had picked differently in
friggin' Logan Brown.
We were so excited for that too, right? I think a lot of us were.
Yeah, well, Cav, let's come on now.
Yeah, but for off-season stuff, I mean, there's a lot of ways this can go, right? Of course, there's the Brinkett stuff. That's sort of like we don't know 50-50. Like what Brett was saying, like it's easy for us, like for example, we were the player to like say something in front of in the media, but then in reality, maybe something else behind the scenes. So hopefully it's the opposite way. Like he is trying to consider staying, but it's just like all these external factors of ownership. Will the same coach be there and all that? Like that's what we don't know, right? It's so easy for us to like maybe manipulate things or manifest things into existence without knowing everything about the player, right? Like, someone that's coming from the States, having a young family, I think he would want to establish his roots wherever he goes, whether back to the States or Canada. But again, I think goaltending and depth scoring will be the thing. Like, are you going to like add Sokolov? Or like if for some reason Tyler Boucher shows up in in training camp, you know what I mean? Like, or Crookshank, like, or Ostapchuk. There's so many like these, like medium, like NHL, like minimum wage players that we could potentially look upon. But I think for that we would probably have to get like another veteran as well, like someone that's a bit more better to like Gambrell or something like that, right? So that's my sort of thinking.
Yeah, no, it's totally fair thought. This season, I was actually hoping at the deadline that Dorian would make a pitch for a center that another team went out and got, and that was Nick Bukestad.
Oh man, you talk about Nick Bukestad so much. It reminded me a couple of years back of Dougie Hamilton. Every podcast
oh my God, yeah, that was really fun.
You were like, oh, bringing in Dougie Hamilton, guys, it's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm. No, and
then he went to New Jersey.
That got to the point where Bennett was literally going to smash my
He wanted to ban the words Dougie Hamilton from the podcast.
He did, because I mentioned him to just too many lengths. But anyway, it's all good. We got Chychrun, who's the other guy who I think I started to get on the trend of mentioning too much. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, Nick Bukestad was a center I hope that the Sens would have pursued, and he's a free agent this summer, so
Mm-hmm.
depending on what his ask is, it would be nice to see a guy like that come into the fold, but I feel like he's gonna maybe ask for a raise after
Yeah.
having a good performance this season. So,
Yeah.
but I agree with you. I think the Sens will need to find some center depth now. Getting Norris back from injury and having him pushing Pinto to the 3 spot really helps.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, yeah, I think they'll need somebody who's defensively responsible on that 4th line. And yeah.
Yeah, you just need those veterans, as much as people say, oh, veterans are slow or something, but like they just add something to like playoff rounds, right? Like even like what happened with Boston, yeah, they got eliminated, but like having Krejci and Bergeron there, I think that helped them. Because, there's like young, like even like, I'm looking at the New Jersey game right now. They're like a young team, but I don't think they really have like that veteran depth. Same thing with Ottawa. You have Giroux, but like you need maybe a little bit more like when it comes to playoff time, right? Like need to acquire one of those like quote unquote lesser known names that is a good veteran that's been in the playoffs before. So that might happen, right? If they're like in that hunt again, like what happened this season, like getting Patrick Brown and all that, maybe something like that may happen again.
Yeah, it'd be nice to bring back Brassard if he was available to actually come back. Guys like Corey Perry as well. He's a bit of a stick in the proverbial pot.
Yeah.
It's being stirring everything, but guys like that really have impacts on playoffs, and they'll come cheap because they're at the end of their careers. Like,
right.
That's a great point, Kev.
Yeah, you need that.
And I believe Reckitt was mentioning a guy like Hamonic coming back. And I think instead of Hamonic, because, Hamonic was actually quite good on the penalty kill this year. He blocked a lot of shots. But at defense, I think it was noticeable that he was getting exposed. And while I don't think the Sens necessarily need to go out and get another defenseman, I feel like a lot of people have been talking about, oh, the Sens need more grit or sandpaper on their defensive blue line. I think grabbing a guy like Radko Gudas, if he's interested in coming to Ottawa, he's played with Claude Giroux, so who knows? Maybe they're on good terms. I don't know, but a guy like that who had really good defensive results this season and playoff experience, tough customer, you wouldn't need a guy to drop the gloves. Like you wouldn't need Brady to drop the gloves if you have a guy like Gudas on your roster. So he's someone who I'm interested in, but it depends on how much he's asking for.
Yeah, like you saying that type of players, like, sort of like an older version of Tyler Clevin, because you don't want to do like what happened with Cody Ceci, where you didn't even give him time in the AHL, and then look what happened. A lot of Sens fans complained about him when he was with Phaneuf. So it's that balance, right? Are you gonna slow down the player's development, or are you gonna give them time to grow a little bit more, but then they'll be more successful long term for us? So that's another thing, right? Clevin looked great, actually. Like I don't think a lot of people were complaining about the way that he played. But it's that AHL thing, right? I think that will help him a lot if he goes down there. Same thing with a Boucher and all those other guys. But, like, you never know. Like, we can't fit people in. Then you have to resort to your draft picks, right?
Yep. That's absolutely right.
So, last question.
Mm-hmm.
So are you of the mind that the Sens have to make the playoffs next season? Is that your expectation for them?
I think so. It's been the longest time since 1992 to 1996 where they didn't make the playoffs, right? It's the longest time in franchise history. Like, even me, I was saying to people, oh, they'll make it this past season. But he's like, damn it, Sens, you did it again to me. Like, a family friend of mine, he was taking care of someone, I think in their house. Like, he works as a nurse. And he said, oh, I remember, it's like, I think it was his second year here in Canada. And he got to see, like, the Sens making it to the playoffs. But, like, every year since then, like, we haven't made it, right? So I'm like, oh, if we make it back again, like, I'm not saying, like, we'll go all the way to, like, the conference finals or anything. But just a sneak preview of that again. Like, you'll see, like, Elgin Street, Sens Mile filled with Sens fans. You'll see the outside, hopefully, like what they used to do in the past, have the outside of the CTC filled with Sens fans. Like, that's what I hope for. Even just like a little teaser, like if for some reason, like we lose in 6 games or something, or 7 games, unless we're like the Florida Panthers and pull that off somehow. But you know what I mean? Like, of course we want playoffs. I think now it's about time. The thing is, if the ownership thing doesn't get resolved in time, I think like Pierre Dorian and DJ Smith will have to stay, because I don't think you want to like reset everything after the draft. It's too much. You don't have a lot of time. I'm just thinking about like the Pittsburgh scenario, right? Where the new ownership sort of came in the middle of the season or something, where they still gave him a transition. But like at the end of the season when they didn't make it, okay, no, clean house. That's my mindset about the what's it called, management and all that. If this doesn't get resolved before draft, or if it's too late, I think they're going to have to stay because they have to evaluate the team, right? Because, different ownership now. It's not the ladies or it's not the board. So,
yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
and
great point.
Yeah, and for sure that's a good point. The last thing I was going to add to that though is I think it also depends on what happens with coaches around the league. Like,
yeah,
for example, you could have teams who, maybe don't make a coaching change until this summer when they get more direction from their ownership groups, and there's GM jobs changing. Philadelphia's had a change, Pittsburgh's had a change. So it'll be interesting to see if those teams have new general managers come in who then make decisions on firing coaches, and that might happen in midsummer. And if a coach like Mike Sullivan comes on the market, and you're, Pierre Dorian, and you get a chance, I think you might be like, should I bring in a guy who, was coaching Crosby and Malkin and got 2 cups in a row in recent NHL history? So I think it'll be dependent on that, but you raise a good point. And I think Ottawa definitely, if they're going to go down that road, they'll have to make a decision as early into the summer as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, even the way that Pierre Dorian was, like, his confidence towards DJ Smith, like what I think was Ian that mentioned it. It's like the way that he mentioned Guy Boucher, like with Pierre Dorian in the past, like he didn't give him a lot of confidence, but then the next month, like he came back for training camp, but then when he started doing bad, see you later, boss. So it's like, hopefully it's not like that again. We'll have to see. There's a lot of external factors that are not in our control. So it's pretty much just wait and see for all of us, but it's very exciting times to be a Sens fan. I can tell you that for free.
Yeah, and that's, I think, a perfect note to end on. I don't think it would be a good interview with Kevin if he didn't leave us with some optimism and positivity at the end of it.
Yeah, nice to chat with you guys again. I really appreciate you inviting me onto the show.
For sure.
Absolutely,
Thanks so much,
Kev. Anytime.
All right, peace out, boys.
See you, Kevin. Cool. All right. Well, that was great. Glad we got to have Kevin on the show. Now, I know Alex has been waiting patiently. Alex, the host of the Behind the Play podcast. So we're happy to finally have him on the show, and we'll quickly get him on stream here.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, Alex.
Hey, not bad. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, no problem. It's been quite a while since we began talking to one another and just chatting in DMs and stuff. So it's nice to finally
it's nice to meet both the Matts. I don't know who has the Twitter account that I DM with each time, but I think
we all have access to
that account.
Okay.
I usually am the one messaging you, but we do all have access.
I was thinking, like, who am I actually? Anyways, it's great to meet you guys, and I'm excited to talk some Sens with you guys.
For sure. As you've heard, because you've been standing by the whole time, we've had 3 people say they prefer Ryan Reynolds being the face of ownership, and one person say they don't mind either way. Where do you fall on the Sens ownership?
I'm going to do like a Skip Bayless, and I'm going to say I hope they both come and join together, join forces, and that'd be pretty cool. I think that's unlikely, but I think that'd be really cool. And there has been some talk about Reynolds tagging along with another prospective ownership bid. So that's my dream bid would be Ryan Reynolds and Snoop Dogg together on opening night. But if that doesn't come about, I definitely say Ryan Reynolds. Like, I'm a soccer fan. What he's done at Wrexham is just so cool, so different. You listen to the players there, and they talk about how much of a team environment, how everything got revamped, how much he's put into it. So that's all you really want as a fan is someone that really cares and puts their time and energy. And as you mentioned, he's from Ottawa, or kind of, so he has some connections, and he's a hockey fan. So I think that'd be amazing. And to have a Wrexham style show would just be, I think just imagine Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk on like ESPN and everywhere, like doing like the goggles after games. Like, I just think it'd be perfect. So that's definitely the bid I'd want.
No, there's definitely a lot of content potential for this team. I think back to like the 2016-17 era when Dylan DeMello and
that guy was the best.
Craig Medaglia and they would shoot those Christmas videos, and DeMello was just like absolutely trolling. Man, that was great content. So yeah, definitely bringing that back to the team, I think, would 100% be very welcome from the fan base.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, they're definitely, and you can kind of see it this year. Like the behind the scenes is so much different than it's been in past years. Like just with all the players and everything. So I definitely think with hopefully with Reynolds it'll be the next step.
Yeah, totally. And as you know, we've been asking everybody tonight, did the Sens live up to your expectations this season? And after that question, what are you expecting from them for this offseason?
I think living up to expectations is tough because I think the Norris injury for me is such a defining marker. Like he was the number one centerman coming into the season. Obviously, into next season, I'm not going to say that. I think Tim Stützle pretty much showed everyone that he's the man. But I think, you missed that. And it was basically the whole year. You played, 8 games, Norris did. So I'd say it was moderately successful. I think the playing meaningful games was important, but I think I had Ian Mendes on my podcast last week, and he said like they still had a chance there, right? Like I think you see the tweet on Twitter about how they had more or tied. I think they had the same amount of points with Florida with like 2 games in hand when the Chikrin deal went through, something around.
Yeah.
And Florida finished 6-7 points ahead, 8 maybe.
So
like they had it in their hands and they really lost it at the end, especially those games against Chicago and Vancouver and those really bad losses. So yeah, I think I'd personally want a new coach. The GM, I feel, I think Dorian's done enough. You guys were talking about with ownership. I think he's done like with money to enough, like other than the Gustafsson trade, I think he's probably done a pretty good job. But I think a new coach would be really good and maybe helps getting DeBrincat, which I think I'm kind of on Matt's point. I think that's if he wants to stay and you can get it for something under $9 to $9 million, I think you do it long term.
Totally. And so going into the offseason then, is there anything you hope Ottawa does other than re-sign DeBrincat long term?
I think if they don't sign him, and I felt very optimistic and talking with Ian and other people, like it sounds like he likes Ottawa, but I think what you guys said about him maybe not liking DJ Smith probably is a thing. I mean, I don't know, but it sounds like it. So I think that's obviously the main priority. You guys talked about I think signing Pinto and Brandstrom to some sort of length that isn't a bridge deal would be ideal, even if you pay a little bit more. I think they're so young. Like people think Brandstrom's old. He's like 23. Right?
Yeah.
Same with Pinto. He's like 21, 22. So I think the goaltending position, I might be an outlier, but I think I'm fine with Sogard. I mean, I'd rather have someone come in if you can, but I don't think it's the end of the world. But if you have the money to get maybe a Varlamov or even like a Casey DeSmith, just like another NHL goalie for close to league min, I'd do it. But I do think though, if they do trade DeBrincat, it opens a world of possibilities because ownership will now spend and they'll have cap space. If they trade him, they'll have $9 million, and you can get. Everyone's talking about that this team lacked depth scoring. You can use a lot of money to add that either through the trade or in free agency. So it's going to be really exciting, and I just hope they get ownership done by the draft or like free agency so they can make those decisions.
Yeah, I can probably safely say that you would really handcuff a team if you brought in new ownership like a week before the draft. Mm-hmm. And then just said, all right, like go nuts. There's not a lot of thought going into that. And, we all hope that ownership is probably done in the next couple of weeks. I feel like it's dragged on a little too long. And then adding that random 6th bidder, the Kings owner, that's a money grab, right?
he's like the worst owner.
Yeah.
People know, like, I'm an NBA fan. Like, they made the playoffs, but he's the worst. Do not touch him. No offense to him, but yeah.
From what I understand, he was like right up there with Melnick as one of the worst like North American owners. And it's getting to a point that if you continue to drag this out, it's going to hinder the performance of the team going forward. And I think, with new ownership looming, Dorion didn't really have a lot of like wiggle room with making bigger moves until, with Chikrin, that's great. But, some of this stuff could have happened sooner. And you probably are in a playoff spot. Like, we don't know if DJ was like, they wanted to get rid of him and they couldn't, because that's a move that would be like lost money essentially. There's so many questions with the ownership thing. And as you said, we were 6 points out of a playoff spot, and that's literally 3 wins. And I believe we have a better like win percentage than the Panthers. So yeah.
No, I mean, I just think about all the games in November they lost by 1 goal. I think the first like 10 games they lost by 1 goal. If you take out others. So I guess what my question is, like, do you want Pierre Dorion to stay GM? Like, I'm a believer, unless it's like a Kyle Dubas or that type. I want Pierre Dorion.
Do you want to answer first, Matt, or do you want me to go?
Yeah. I mean, I think Dorion post Melnick's death has been much more positive and is able to make moves that actually benefit the team, whereas others sort of just spun the tires. But he's been a GM for 7 seasons now, I believe. It could be getting too little, too late. And a new owner, and I've said this on several podcasts now, like, this is a results-driven business. And if you're not getting results, you're losing money. They had more sellouts this year, but you know what would have been better? Getting playoff sellouts. And you took too long. And so I would be, sort of remiss if I didn't like the idea of a new GM, but Dorion did what he needed to, and here we are.
No, for sure.
And for myself, like, I think Dorion has done, in hindsight, the Gustafsson Talbot trade sucks, but I think the past year he has done a lot better, and I think that's partially due to Ryan Bonus being in the front office. So in my opinion, if Dorion is changed out when new ownership comes in, I really do hope that Ryan Bonus gets the GM job and they give him a shot, because like I was saying earlier on this episode or this live stream, he was really good at analyzing talent and being a pro scout and I think he was senior VP of player development in Pittsburgh, and they found a lot of diamonds in the rough and a lot of depth players who came up. And yeah, they were playing with Crosby, but some of those depth players like, Sherry, Zach Aston Reese, some of these guys just came out of nowhere and played quite good for Pittsburgh in the playoffs and were just very solid depth additions. And, he was part of that. And so I would really like to see him continue in Ottawa's front office, and I would not want him to go. He's a young guy. He likes analytics, which is good, because, I think it's important to kind of dip your toes and, of course, like, trusting your eye, but trusting analytics as well, and kind of striking a balance between those two. So, I'd like to see him continue forward if Dorion was let go, but I'm not like gunning for Dorion. Whereas I think when it comes to coaching, I'm a little bit more interested in seeing if Ottawa could find a better coach.
No, I think what you said about, I think the Pittsburgh connections, like Mike Sullivan, you guys mentioned earlier, if he was available, I'd snap him up. But I think the pro scouting with Bonus is really interesting, because this team going forward is going to be a cap team. Like, they're going to have to find diamonds in the rough. Like, they've just traded 2 first-round picks in back-to-back years. Like, they have guys like Sokolov, Greg, Ostapchuk, more guys like that in the AHL that might be ready in 2-3 years. But after that, there's nothing, right? And so you need to find a Zach Aston Reese or a Connor Sherry type, and for this team to, I think, like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, what does this team want to be? It wants to be a Stanley Cup. Like, I think this team can win the Stanley Cup if managed properly in the next 5 years. I think it's doable. You have everyone other than Sanderson and I guess Chikrin as well, and obviously DeBrincat. But you have like Brady, Stützle, Shabbat. I know I'm missing people, Batherson, right? So you have a lot of the core, Norris, together, and you need to now find those diamonds in the rough, because this team this year, what was it terrible at? Depth scoring, right? And that's where you find the diamonds in the rough.
Yeah, and I think you really need to improve your pro scouting. Somebody just pointed out in the chat, like there are a lot of scouts that sort of make these calls, but Dorian has final say, and our pro scouting has not been good enough. And you need to bolster that, especially if you're going to be a cap team. Like there are going to be players out there that are looking for contracts that, probably didn't score a lot, but were really effective, at 5-on-5 and defensive play and all that sort of stuff. And that's what we need. We don't need bums on the fourth line that are just going to be out there doing cardio,
No, Dylan Gambrell comes to mind. I just Watson, I like Watson, but especially Gambrell, like he's your third line center. It's like, that's tough. That's really rough, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us,
Thank
Alex.
you.
It's been a
and
great
waiting
chat.
for
waiting for
4
everyone.
minutes.
I had tennis, so I ran over here. So I'm sorry for being late. So, but
Nice.
No. It's all good. You were definitely on time. Everyone, we had a lot. It was a lot more chatty than normal, and that's good. It was good. So glad that you were able to make it, and thanks for coming on.
No, thank you guys, and I'm excited for what comes for you guys in the future. Definitely, I'll keep watching and listening to your show, and you guys are doing some great stuff. So keep it up, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks so much, Alex.
Well, that was Alex, host of the Behind the Play podcast. So great of him to join us. We actually have one more guest that joined us a little late, but very excited to have them on, taking Matt by surprise, I know. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this last guest on, then we're going to probably run through some of the questions on the side, and then we'll peace out for the night. So we'll bring on our next guest, which is Noah joining us. So Noah, welcome to the show, dude. How are you doing tonight?
I'm wonderful. It's been a day, so we're here. We're doing it. Let's talk some Sens. I'm ready.
Yeah, I see you're rocking the Belleville jersey,
Yeah,
so that's pretty
I had
sweet.
to throw it on. You can see some of the other ones in the back.
Yeah, I was just noticing the Stützle man.
Yeah.
Jersey. That's awesome.
I would like move my webcam, but it's too much effort. So
That's
but,
what I heard.
yeah, so I'm ready. I'm ready to talk some Sens, guys. Let's go.
For those of you that don't know, Noah is an absolute riot. If you ever go to a Sens game with this guy, it is a time and a half. There's always something that happens. So great to go to Sens games with. But okay, question for you. We were asking everyone else, if it's an ownership, a face of an ownership group, and it's Snoop Dogg versus Ryan Reynolds, who do you prefer in an ownership face-off?
Okay, so I prefer like Ryan Reynolds, right? Because like for like the other reasons that people brought up, because he's like a local kind of guy, right? And like you can obviously tell that like he has just like a lot of passion for the sport and the team and just hockey in general, right? And obviously the fact that he can do just like such an amazing job with like a documentary like that. And I remember I brought this up earlier to you, Matt, but like with Snoop Dogg, like the one thing is that he's like a big like NFT guy, right? So one thing I'm a bit worried about is that I just don't want the organization to touch anything like that, because like the guy literally thinks he's an NFT monkey. So I don't know what to tell you. Like, but yeah. So that's just like kind of one thing. Other than that, like I feel like Snoop Dogg would be like great just for publicity, because the guy's involved with anything, right? Like I mean, like I literally have Snoop Dogg rosé right here. I was drinking some, so I just spilled it. Oh my god. Anyways, but so like the guy's involved with everything, right? Like he even like was like a part over phase last year for a little bit, and then that kind of went downhill because that's a whole other thing. But So yeah, like, but I feel like they could bring like a lot of different things, especially with The Rock too. Like he's another like kind of big celebrity with a huge following, and I feel like there's definitely more like bigger name celebrities than like we're being told, right? Like there has to be at this point. If the Snoop Dogg and like The Rock are in there, like who else is gonna be there? I don't know. Could be
Zach Galifianakis, maybe.
there you go. I don't know who that is, but that's
Yeah,
who.
you do. You've seen The Hangover. You know who Zach Galifianakis
Okay,
is.
dude, Eminem. I don't know. It could be anybody. But anyways,
Eminem
yeah.
versus Snoop.
yeah. Anyways, but yeah, so I feel like I kind of lost my train of thought there, but that was I prefer Ryan Reynolds, and
Okay.
that is my those are my reasons why, because he's like a local guy and he likes hockey. So yeah.
Okay, moving on to the hockey side of things. What were your expectations for the Sens this season? You know, did they kind of live up to the expectations you had for them? And, you know, what do you hope they do for this offseason to make them a better team going into next season?
So like my expectations were pretty much where like they kind of ended up being. Like I was like hopeful they can make the playoffs, but like realistically, like right where they kind of are is where like I pretty much thought they would be, right? Like not like right directly in there, right right in the mix, like in the playoffs, right? But not like so far out that like, you know, you're gonna be getting into the draft lottery, you're gonna be getting a top pick. Like I feel like what they're picking 12th, like I feel like that's like kind of like around where I feel like they would have picked, right? I think somebody said you still get like a 5% chance that's the second overall pick, so a 5% chance. So you know, but and that we would get that pick too because it wouldn't go to Arizona. But yeah, like they pretty much just where I thought they would be. They are. Like I didn't think they were gonna make the playoffs this year, but I'm happy like where they are. That they definitely took a step forward this season, as opposed to like last season and being like a lottery team. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. So this offseason, is there anything that you hope they do to kind of improve the roster so that they can make the playoffs for sure next season?
So when it comes to that, like definitely goaltending, like I feel like I personally believe like in especially like Forsberg has to be like 100%, right? But I believe in like a Forsberg and like Sogard tandem. But I also feel like especially with like Forsberg injury problems, you're gonna have to kind of pick up a goalie because I feel like there's gonna be a point where Sogard realistically, I feel like you don't want him to play like more than 15 games, right? Like I feel like that's like more than you want to play him to play next season. And I feel like there isn't really a world where like considering Sen's goalie history with injuries, I feel like there isn't a world where like, you know, he's gonna eventually have to I feel like he's eventually gonna have to play more than like we would want him to because like somebody's just eventually gonna go down. But I don't know if that's like I don't know if we would need to pick up like a star caliber goalie like I know people keep on bringing up like Halbuck. I don't see that happening at all. Like I feel like one, like why would you want to leave Winnipeg and come to Ottawa? No offense, but you know
We got Ryan Reynolds and Snoop Dogg.
true.
Dude.
Okay, true, but I feel like you'd want to go somewhere, you know, with like nicer weather and like maybe not as crazy of like a fan base and stuff like that, right? Like maybe just like a little more low key plays, but I obviously don't know him, so I'm just kind of speculating here. But like I don't see that happening. Like I know somebody brought up John Gibson. Like I'm a big fan of his, but he's kind of washed up now, so like and he's expensive, so like I wouldn't want him. One name that really intrigues me, but I don't see this happening like at all, is Calgary has like huge logjam in the crease, right? And like Wolf, dude, he's so good. They're never gonna trade him, but if somehow, some way, Pierre Dorian could like pry him out of Calgary, I think he'd be so good for us. And then there's like another goalie prospect who I think who's pretty solid. But like if you're gonna pick up another prospect, another goalie prospect, you'd want it to be like a caliber, like an Askarov or like Wolf or like Wallstedt. You know what I mean? Because there's no point in just picking up another like prospect more on like the Merlinen or like the Sogard level, right? Because like at the end of the day, they're still not surefire as like an Askarov or a Wolf or a Wallstedt, right? So if only we could have picked Wallstedt in 2021.
Don't worry, we've had many a conversation about that.
We're not going to get started on that. So
Goaltender, and you think that improving the goaltender position will help the Sens make playoffs next year?
Yeah, for sure. And then when it comes, like, I still feel like we need like somebody like we could use another just right-handed defenseman. I don't know who it would be. Like, I off the top of my head, I don't know the names, but like somebody on the right shot, because we still only have Zub, right? Who's like the right shot defenseman. Like, we still don't really have anybody on the right. So if Zub goes down, we're kind of screwed, right? And I still feel like there should still be some like veteran leadership provided on the back end, right? Like, I feel like kind of like plug it, like if you were to just plug in, like, I don't think this is gonna happen, but if we were to just kind of like plug in Lassie and like JBD right into those two kind of right-handed spots, right? I feel like that's just kind of a recipe for disaster because they're too new. Like, I feel like you still need somebody back there to kind of like anchor and still be a kind of veteran presence. You know what I mean? If that's Hamonic, I don't know who. Like, I'm not opposed to Hamonic coming back if it's for the right price. Like, I'm not like, I don't have a severe hatred like some people have for him, but you know, yeah. So I would be all right with him coming back. But that's just like, yeah, like I feel like that. And then the forward, like I feel like we're pretty set. Like I feel like I don't think you have to like trade anybody to get like a bottom six, right? I feel like that could be just completely like done internally. Like I feel like you like at that point you could have like Sokolov showed how great he can be at the NHL level in those kind of few games. Obviously very, very, very like small sample size, right? But he showed promise there. Like obviously, like I feel like Ridley Greig's gonna be a full-time NHLer next year. I feel like Crookshank is gonna get a shot. Like I could even see like Ostapchuk getting 9 games out of training camp, right? So but I feel like that like you don't need to go out and trade for more bums, right? You could just replace those with players who are actually gonna be here down the line, who are actually like good and not old, right? Like, and that's the other thing too, is that like if we're gonna go pick up more older players, they're not gonna be here with this team in 2 years when they're like really contending for a cup, right? They're gonna be gone. Like Watson gone, like, you know, Gambrell gone. But like somebody like a Ridley Greig or like an Ostapchuk or somebody like those guys, like just to rattle off a couple names, like those are like players who are going to be here for, I would say, like the next 3, 4, 5 years, right? So, and that's why I don't feel like there's any point in giving up assets just to, when you can just replace them internally.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Noah, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Good rundown
no problem.
of what you want to see.
I didn't want to hold you guys up too much because I know we've gone on for a bit long tonight, but yeah, I'm happy that you guys could slip me in at the last second here.
Yeah, no problem. So thanks for joining us, and have a good night, dude.
Yeah, you too, guys.
Take it easy.
See you guys.
All right. Well, that was our last guest for the night, but we're just going to run through some of the questions that came up in chat tonight. And the first one that came through, and we kind of talked about it already, but Sean was asking us our thoughts on kicking tires on Connor Hellebuck if he becomes available. Now, we kind of mentioned it a little bit here and there, and I mean, Matt, I'll flip it to you first because you're our resident goalie guy. So, you know, you give me your thoughts, and then I'll say mine.
I mean, he's really good. Like,
that's it. Stream over, done.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had a really, really good goalie since Craig Anderson, and we've been searching for quite a while to find a replacement. You know, Hellebuck is probably going to command a pretty big cap hit, and so I don't really think it's possible at all. But it would be awesome because, like, I feel like he would thrive in this on this team and would give us a lot of stability on the back end. And then, you know, him and Forsberg would be a pretty nuts tandem, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think for me, like, I don't know. I think, and this is totally just an outsider's perspective, so feel free to totally disagree with me, but he just kind of seems kind of like an ass to say it in the most polite way possible. I don't know. He just kind of seems to have like a bit of an attitude when I've seen him in media availabilities. And maybe it's just because I usually see them near the end of the season where, you know, people are a lot more tense and stressed. But I don't know. I don't get good vibes off of him. And sometimes when the vibe-o-meter is off, you just got to stay away, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, I think that's a guy who, you know, and also he's due for a contract extension. So then it's like, well, how much money do you want to dedicate to a goalie because we've seen sometimes goalies get paid a lot, and then when they don't come through for your team, it's like now you've got a goalie who's not doing much for you, and they're being paid a ton, and you can't get rid of them. So
Yeah, absolutely.
excuse me. Hamza asks, if the Sens win the lottery, do you keep the pick? Now,
I mean,
the highest the Sens could pick is second overall, because
Yeah.
the new lottery odds make it that you can only move up 10 spots. So Noah was saying, I believe it was Noah, that the Sens have a 5% chance at picking second overall.
I thought it was
So-
3.5.
Okay, well, yeah. So
Yeah,
a
it's
very
not
minuscule
high,
chance.
and I mean, but you have to, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah, I
You-
think
like-
at that point you would keep the pick and you would draft a guy like Fantilli is a guy who's expected to go second overall.
Yeah.
That's a guy who can easily pop and play in your lineup next season. So
Yep.
I would say, I think unanimous between the both the Mats here, we say yes.
yeah.
So Chris Pierce said, with our current top six, if we experience another season-ending injury to one of the guys in the top six, does the team still have a chance at making the playoffs?
It's a hard question to answer, because if it's a center, then I feel like it's pretty detrimental. If it's a winger, not so much. I think, like, if it's Drake Batherson, for example, like, no, you can put somebody in there that's still is gonna play above where they should be, get 40 points or something like that, and be survivable. But, like, if it's one of your centers, and unfortunately it was with Josh Norris, like, yeah, it definitely could be pretty substantial.
Yeah, I'm of the same mindset. I think you really just can't have anyone in your top six go down next season. You just can't. I think that not having Norris cost the team the points that would have gotten them into the playoffs. And I know
Yeah.
goaltending was a big question mark, and there were injuries and this, that, and the other thing. But genuinely, I believe that if Norris had been healthy for even close to 82 games, like let's say 65, 70, I think the Sens would have made the playoffs.
Yeah.
The next question we got is from one of our pals, Liam, who says, if we re-sign Alex DeBrincat, how do we upgrade in net? It's a must-do for next season, clearly, and cap will be tight. So this is a good question, and I think this is why a lot of people have been debating this on social media. For me, Alex DeBrincat is a very, very good top six goal scorer. In a down season this year, he had 27 goals. So for me, it's not even a question that you bring him back. And if you have to cut cap elsewhere, and we brought it up earlier, but if you need to somehow give up an asset to trade out Matthew Joseph to get rid of his almost $3 million so that you can improve in goal or depth elsewhere, I think you have to do that instead. Because if you cut Alex DeBrincat from your roster, you're just going to be searching for the next Alex DeBrincat or a guy to fit that role for the next X number of years. You have no one in the system that can replace the level of production that guy's going to give you. So to me, it wouldn't make sense to not re-sign him. And also, he was playing a very physical game this season. He is usually a guy who does use his body, but he had like over 100 hits this season, which for a goal scorer like him is not normal and not what his game style is meant for. And Batherson was a guy who didn't lay the body much this season, even though he laid the body a lot last season. So I think you just basically need to have Batherson laying the body more and let DeBrincat kind of bring more of that speed skill game and not have to be as physical. But I mean, that's just really nitpicking. I just think that you won't find talent like Alex DeBrincat if you let him go. So
yeah, I think Liam's more saying, like, if he stays. Like, I think the Sens are going to try and re-sign him to whatever they possibly can, best team-friendly deal, but obviously want him to pay his due. But how we upgrade in net is, like, you're going to have to find a goalie who's willing to take a little less to bet on themselves. And, if it really comes down to it, like, Nedeljkovic wasn't very good in Detroit, but he was very good in Carolina. So if he can find some stability behind a a better defense in Ottawa and a lesser defense than Carolina, but like you got to do it. Like I can see him, or maybe Aiden Hill, for example. Reckitt pointed him out. Those are guys that you could probably get for under $2 million. But yeah, like we are going to be a cap tight team, but you're going to have to be smart on those signings.
Totally. So one of our pals here used to be involved with the podcast, has a few questions dropping for us, going hard on us, but I love it. So Every Legends Made drops Kaslik, fourth line center, no question, boys. And that's fair. I mean,
I like Kaslik at fourth line center.
I do too. I think running the live stream, sometimes you just forget about every player on the roster.
Yeah.
Kaslik is a fourth line center. Yeah, for sure. I think he'd be a good player, but I also wouldn't be opposed to Ottawa finding another center, like a veteran center in free agency, and playing two centers on a line. They did that a lot this season. You saw guys like Derek Brassard playing on a line with Gambrell, and they would swap who would take the faceoffs. So if you have a guy like that coming in and him and Casty just swap who does faceoffs and stuff, fine by me. But yeah, I like Kaslik. I'd like to see more in his offensive game because he definitely showed that in the preseason. And I don't know if it was just how the coach deployed him or if he had a lack of confidence or what happened or if it was line mates, but didn't see as much of his offensive game as I think Kaslik's capable of, even though he's a bottom six player. So I would like to see him kind of have, a 10, 15 goal season next year, which is really, I think, fair expectations, and just kind of be a little bit more prominent for the Sens in that bottom six.
Yeah.
And Ever Legends Made also says, don't remember when Melnick bought the team. He was announced the new owner, but NHL didn't let him take control till the next year. So I actually don't remember the situation very well because I was quite young at the time.
Yeah, we were 8.
As you could imagine. So honestly, don't really remember it all that well. But I feel like the NHL would have a plan in place. The ownership would have a plan in place. They've already talked to Pierre Dorion. He's made that public that he's talked to the ownership groups that are in the bidding process. So he'll have a good idea of what the expectations are from each of those groups. So I think that answers that one, or at least maybe kind of. I guess we'll see. But I think the ownership might take control of the situation a little bit quicker. You're putting it out there like Dorion's alone decision making on NHL players. Remember, we have a whole scouting team. Yeah, so that's true, and I think it's just because Dorion has that final say. Listen, the Sens haven't had a lot of shakeup in pro scouting over the years. The one, new player, if you want to call it that's been brought in, or not player, sorry, the one new front office person who's been brought in, who's very notable, is Ryan Bonus. So I think you could make the argument that Ryan Bonus has also really helped Pierre Dorion's assessment of talent by being a guy who has a lot of experience in that category, working with the Pittsburgh Penguins for 5-6 years, whatever it was. So to me, yes, Dorion has a team with him, but I think Ryan Bonus deserves more credit there than maybe Ottawa's pro scouts. But I don't know if you hold the same opinion, Matt.
Yeah, I kind of answered his question with, I want to say, I can't even remember. But yeah, our pro scouting sucks, and we need guys that are going to make better recommendations than they have. And Bonus seems like a really good guy for that. And let's hope diamonds in the rough can be found.
Well summed up. What else we got here? Every Legends Made.
I think a good last one would be, do we not totally not care about Sokolov, Shaw, Lodin? See, Sokolov, I think, I don't really love his NHL ceiling. Like his skating is going to really hold him back. I never saw a lot. He scored, which was great. That's awesome. But I don't know if there's a lot of longevity there. I I think Lodin, for example, there's talks of him going back to the SHL because like he was injured, not getting a lot of playing time. At this point, he almost seems like a bit of a lost project. Yarventi, though, I think could definitely be a guy that has value going forward. He was a young draft eligible player, very young when he was drafted, and he has the opportunity. I believe he's 20 still. So that's a guy that you could have maybe play a couple games, see if he fits into the NHL structure of things and move on. Like he's on an ELC and those are going to be like gold for a cap team going forward.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Yarventi more suits a game style of maybe third line than fourth line. Like he's a guy who I would like to see his offensive talents be used rather than getting like 8 minutes a game and not really getting to do anything. So it depends on that. But yeah, hopefully they have a good camp. I'd like to see Zach Ostapchuk make it into the lineup. I think he'd be a great add. It was mentioned earlier, but guys like Crookshank are down in Belleville who could make an impact potentially on the Sens roster next season. Ridley Gregg will be here, I think, full time next season. So there's definitely some depth options they have within the system that can really help them next year. So thank you for all your questions and comments you put forward to us. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the compliment at the end there. Appreciate that as well. So I think after an hour and 35 minutes, that'll wrap up the live stream. Went a bit longer than I expected, but loved every minute of it. So thank you to everybody who's watched this far. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. We had 6 guests, so it was a nice long show. Lots of talking about your Ottawa Senators. And if you liked our show, please hit subscribe, and we'd really appreciate that and the ongoing support. I've got some plans, some irons in the fire, hopefully for the summer to bring in some interesting guests and maybe do some interesting short videos. So stay tuned for that. Matt, did you?
No, I was just
I thought
finger gunning because I was like,
thought you were doing
that's
this.
sick.
So anyway, thanks for watching tonight. Really appreciate it. Go Sens go. You can find us on Twitter at the Senstennial. We'll see you on there. That's where we're most active. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Peace.